Book of Genesis, chapter 12, from 1 to 3. Book of Genesis, chapter 12, from 1 to 3. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great. And thou shalt be a blessing, and I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. May the Lord bless the reading of this portion. Almost we have seen the life of Abraham through and through for the past several days. Now, let us see one more thing from the life of Abraham. Here we see Abraham, as we saw some time back, Abraham is not a native of Canaan. He was brought to Canaan from Ur of Chaldees. As we see in book of Genesis, same book of Genesis, chapter 11, and verse 26, 27. And Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, Haran, and Haran begat Lot. And in 28th verse we see, and Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity, that is in Ur of Chaldees. So the native place of Abraham or his father Terah is Ur of Chaldees, not Canaan. He was brought to Canaan from Ur of Chaldees. But same 31st verse again we see, and Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his son's son, and Sarai his son, his daughter-in-law, his son Abraham's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, and they came unto Haran and dwelt there. So very clearly and evidentially we see in 31st verse itself that Lord has called Abraham while he was in Ur of Chaldees to go to Canaan. See, in the latter part of 31st verse we see, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, and they came unto Haran and dwelt there. So their journey is to Canaan, not to Haran. But they stopped at Haran because Abram's father Terah died there. And Abram settled over there till we see in the 4th verse of 12th chapter. Abram settled there and he earned so much of property in Haran, not in Ur of Chaldees. In 5th verse we see, 12th chapter, 5th verse, and Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. It is not that Abraham got all this wealth in Ur of Chaldees while he was with his father, while he was in his native place, that is Ur of Chaldees. But later on, when God told him, he moved from that place towards the promised land, that is Canaan. Now, if you see, Abraham and Nahor, both are brothers, according to 29th verse of 11th chapter. And Abraham and Nahor took them wives. Even before them, maybe his eldest, I think, Haran, and he died over there. And after Haran, and Abraham and Nahor, both of them took wives. Then we see Abraham moved further from there to promised land along with his father. Because his father is elderly person, it is written as Terah took Abraham, Lot, and Sarah, and to go to Canaan. But it is not so. Lot spoke to Abraham because he is elderly person. It is written there. Okay. Anyway, now we'll come to 24th chapter of Genesis, chapter 24. Uh, now we see. Last time also we have seen this one. 10th verse we see. 24th chapter, 10th verse. And the servant took 10 camels of the camels of master and departed, for all the goods of his master were in his hand. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia unto the city of Nahor. So this Nahor, they have when Abraham moved from Ur of Chaldees, there is no city of Nahor. And after he moved from Ur of Chaldees, then we don't know at what time, when it happened, but definitely the city of Nahor came into existence. So there he dwelt, his father and Nahor and the descendants dwelt there. If you see further in 26th chapter, I think. In 28th chapter, we see. In 28th chapter of Genesis, here we are told about Isaac is calling Jacob and asking him to go to Bethuel. In 28th chapter, 2nd verse. Arise, go to Padanaram, to the house of Bethuel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. So here we see Isaac is asking his son Jacob to go to Padanaram and take a wife from there, not from the people of Canaan. In first verse he says, I don't want you to take a wife from people of Canaan, but you go to Padanaram and then take a wife for thee from it very clearly mentioned house of Bethuel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. Very clearly it was told that whom Jacob has to marry also. Very clearly and specifically Jacob was told whom to marry. Here we see he has to go to Padanaram. He has to go to Bethuel's house, that is Rebekah's brother's house. Then he has to take a daughter from Laban, that is Bethuel's son. So here we see Nahor is in Ur of Chaldees, first of all, because in 24th chapter we saw, 10th verse, Nahor is in Ur of Chaldees. Then Jacob is asked to go to that place, Ur of Chaldees. That means Mesopotamia. 24th chapter we saw Mesopotamia. And Mesopotamia, Ur of Chaldees, both are the same. If you see Book of Acts, chapter 7, verse 2, I think. There also we see the mention of Mesopotamia. Book of Acts, chapter 7. And verse 2. And he said, men, brethren, and fathers, hearken, the God of glory appeared unto our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he dwelt in Haran. Charan, it is Haran. So, before he dwelt in Haran, Abraham was in Ur of Chaldees, as we saw in Genesis chapter 11. In Acts 7, we see before he dwelt in Haran, Abraham dwelt in Mesopotamia. So that means both are the same. Mesopotamia and Haran are the same places. As we also saw in book of Nehemiah, chapter 9. Book of Nehemiah, chapter 9, also we saw uh, verse 6, 7. Book of Nehemiah, chapter 9, verse 7. Thou art the Lord, the God, who didst choose Abram and broughtest him forth out of Ur of the Chaldees and gavest him the name of Abraham. So very clearly he says, Nehemiah, he prays to the Lord that he has chosen Abram when he was in Ur of Chaldees and gave us the name of Abraham. So by now we know very clearly that Abraham dwelt in Ur of Chaldees. It is his native place. And from there, he moved to the promised land. So now, when they started off the journey, they came and stayed at Haran for some time. Then again, Abraham moved to Canaan. Now we see in the city of Nahor, uh, these people, the Abraham's relatives, are still staying there. That means Nahor's family, they are still staying there itself. Abraham got uh, the information from them. See, kindly turn with me to Genesis chapter 22. Genesis chapter 22 and 20th verse. And it came to pass after these things that it was told Abraham, saying, Behold, Milcah, she had also borne children unto thy brother Nahor. So, on his name, Nahor, the city is developed by now, and Milcah has borne children for Nahor. And extremely sorry for the interruption. Now, let us see the language they speak in that land. Turn with me to Uh, Genesis chapter 31 now. Genesis chapter 31 and verse 20. Genesis chapter 31 and verse 20, we see. Here it is written, and Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he told him not that he fled. Now, Laban, he is native of that place, Nahor, or Ur of Chaldees, or Mesopotamia. Now, the language they speak is Syrian language. Now, Laban is very well known as Syrian, Laban the Syrian. In 24th verse also we see, and God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night. So the language they speak is Syrian language. In several occasions after this also we see Laban the Syrian, the Laban the Syrian. In several occasions in Genesis we see Laban the Syrian. But then God, when he called Abraham, when he was on his journey, Abraham is not known as Syrian. It is a different name was given to Abraham. See, kindly turn with me now to book of Genesis chapter 14 and verse 13 now. Genesis chapter 14 and verse 13. And there came one that had escaped and told Abraham the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abraham. Here we see it should have been told Abraham the Syrian, as was told about Laban the Syrian. But now here it is very clearly told that Abraham is an Hebrew. First part of 13th verse we see, and there came one that escaped and told Abraham the Hebrew. So here we see the difference here. He is not known as Syrian. Lord has brought him out of that place, and first time we see the name Hebrew in this place. So Abraham was given a new place or new name. He is known as Hebrewite. He is known as Hebrew. 39th chapter of Genesis. Genesis chapter 39. 14. Audio off a bit. Okay. 39 chapter 4th verse. And his master saw that the Lord was with him. And sorry, somewhere I missed it. Not fourth verse, just a minute. Same 39th chapter and verse 14. Book of Genesis 39:14. That she called unto the men of her host and spake unto them, saying, see, he hath brought in a Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. Now, the descendant of Abraham, a great grandson of Abraham, Joseph, is known as Hebrew. Abraham is known as Hebrew. First we saw in Genesis chapter 14. Now his great grandson Joseph is also known as Hebrew now. Turn with me to 41st chapter and verse 12. 41st chapter verse 12. And there was there with us a young man, and Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. Here the another mention to Pharaoh. The servants of Pharaoh were telling about Joseph to Pharaoh. While telling, they are not telling the name of Joseph, but they are telling the place to which he belongs to. They say here 12th verse, and there was there with us a young man, and Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. 43rd chapter. 43rd chapter and 32nd verse. And they set on for him by himself, and for them by themselves, and for the Egyptians which did eat with him by themselves, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination unto Egyptians. Now, Joseph is the ruler of Egypt, and all his brethren and their children with families, they came out to meet Joseph to take victuals from the land of Egypt. And they say that it was mentioned here, latter part of the 32nd verse, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination unto Egyptians. So here again, the mention of Hebrews we see. So now Abram was named a Hebrew. Only Abram was named as Hebrew, as we saw in Genesis chapter 14. From then onwards, the descendants were known as Hebrews. Chapter 1 of book of Exodus. Exodus chapter 1, verse 15. Exodus chapter 1, verse 15. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. So the midwives, they are helping children of Israel to while they are at the time of consummate, at the time of delivery. For a Pharaoh ordered the midwives, when you see the male child, you kill them, and when you see a female child, you let them live. By that, Pharaoh wanted that all the children of Israel at a given time will be converted into Egyptians. But they spared the male child. Now it is mentioned here, Hebrew midwives. They are midwives, but they are Hebrewites. Chapter 2, verse 6. Chapter 2, verse 6. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Now here see, Pharaoh's daughter, when she came to bathe there, and when she saw that box wherein Moses was kept, she came and ordered for that box, and when she opened, immediately she says, she is this one is Hebrews' children, one of the Hebrews' children. So now the descendants of Abraham, very clearly we see by now, all the descendants of Abraham were named as Hebrews. Book of John, chapter 19. Book of John, chapter 19, and verse 20. Book of John, chapter 19, and verse 20. This title then read many of the Jews, for the place where Jesus was crucified was nigh to the city, and it was written in Hebrew and Greek and Latin. So now, not only the people of Israel were called as Hebrews, but also their language is also Hebrew language now. We saw before the hand in 28th chapter, 31st chapter, 32nd chapter of Genesis that the native place of Abraham is Mesopotamia and Ur of Chaldees, and the language they speak, because Laban hails from that place, the language they speak is Syrian language. And only to Abraham, God has revealed another name as Hebrew, and God has given them another language known as Hebrew language now. Again, I'm reading the portion, 20th verse of 19th chapter, latter part. It was written in Hebrew and Greek and Latin. So Hebrew is a language, and this Hebrew and Jew are both known as a single place. So kindly turn with me to book of Second Kings, chapter 18. Book of Second Kings, chapter 18. Uh, Verse 26. Then said Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, the Shebna, and Joah unto Rabshakeh, speak, I pray thee, to thy servants in the Syrian language, for we understand it, and talk not with us in the Jews' language in the ears of the people. So there is no difference between Hebrew and Jew. Hebrews are known as Jews also. So the language, Hebrew language is Jews language also. We should not see any difference here because the descendants are known as Hebrew, and very clearly we saw step by step. All the children of Israel are known as Hebrews now. And the language they speak also Hebrew, as we see in John chapter 19. But here we see language as Jews language. It is not Jews language, but language in Hebrew only. Book of Acts, chapter 21. Book of Acts, chapter 21. Verse 40. And when he had given him license, Paul stood on the stairs and beckoned with the hand unto the people. And when there was made a great silence, he spake unto them in the Hebrew tongue, saying, Here Paul also is speaking in Hebrew language. 22nd chapter, Acts 22nd chapter, verse 2. And when they heard that he spake in the Hebrew tongue to them, they kept the more silence, and he said. So here God not only brought Abraham out of Ur of Chaldees or Mesopotamia, he brought him to a promised land known as Canaan, and he blessed him with much wealth, with the maid servants, the men servants, cattle, everything. And not only that, he has given him a new name known as Hebrew. And then he has given him a new language. The language is Hebrew. Original language Abraham spoke is Syrian language. Now God has given him a new language, Hebrew language. And when you and I obey to the Lord and keep his commandments, you and I were also promised that we are given a new name and a new language. Kindly turn with me now to book of Revelation, chapter 2. Book of Revelation, chapter 2. Verse 17. Chapter 2, verse 17. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in that stone, kindly observe here, and in that stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving he that receiveth it. Abraham received a new name, Hebrew, and it is meant for his generations to generation as Hebrew nation. And Abraham was given a name, and it was for the generations, not the old name as a old language, as Syrian language, but Abraham was given a new language, a Syrian language. So apart from him, no one can uh, learn that language or know that language. Because of that only, that language only, the people of Israel, children of Israel, were delivered several times from the hands of the enemy. Now turn with me to book of Revelation chapter 14 and verse 3. Book of Revelation chapter 14 and verse 3. And they sung as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders, and no man could learn that song but the 140 and 4,000 which were redeemed from the earth. God is giving them a new song. That means no one can language, no one can learn it. Very clearly we see. See, uh, in the third verse again. And they sung as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders, and no man could learn that song. Naturally, any song can be learned by anyone if he pays some interest. He is having some inquisition to know that. But here, the song which we sing when we go to heaven, no other people can sing this song except the redeemed. Abraham was redeemed and he was given a new name and he was given a language. Now you and I also redeemed. You and I were going to be given a new name, and you and I are going to sing a new song in a new language. God is going to give to us if you and I cling to the Lord as Abraham clung to the Lord. May the Lord help us.